let's start this all
Yeah.
over.
Okay. Welcome. Yeah, we're starting this podcast with a little bit of laughter because for those of you that have tried to do a podcast or something similar, it's not as easy as it looks. Maybe we should put a "Don't try this at home" or "Only by professionals" marker across the
Well,
bottom.
it makes you scratch your head. We bought Logitech webcams, but Logitech doesn't actually have a software that works.
Yeah.
And here we are doing the software dance for the past couple of
Right.
weeks. But
Right.
um,
So we tried.
the most gut wrenching feeling is to record an entire podcast and then figure out it didn't work.
Yeah, so we tried the old Logitech software. We tried the new Logitech software. Hell, I've even bought a new laptop. We've tried about everything, and now we're actually using a software called Movavi so that we can record. Each of us record our side of this equation. And yesterday we attempted to do this recording, and then you found out there was a microphone problem, and so you sounded like you were screaming in a in a bullhorn at everybody. Stuff happens. So here we are again, right? We're podcast attempt number 2. Let's get on to today's topics, right? The first one, frankly, is going to be about benchmarks, and it's just simple why we think benchmarks are stupid. But we're going to talk about that a little bit more detail, and then we'll hit some information about something else that we're going through as we say that we're going to talk about the struggles of running an RIA, hiring people, right? I don't know any financial advisors that are HR experts, so we're going to dig into that. So let's get started with benchmarks. Why is that the topic of this week, Manish?
Well, let's take a step back. The regulations require anyone who reports mutual fund performance or any type of model account performance to have a relevant benchmark, and then also explain what constitutes that benchmark. Right. So it's a standard practice. Anytime you see performance reports, you see a benchmark. I've always felt that the use of a standard benchmark is a very dangerous practice. Right. So hear me out. Let's assume that you work with a financial planner. You decide that 8% is the annualized return you need over the next 30, 40, 50 years, whatever it may be, to reach your financial goals, right? Everything is moving along. A couple years go by, you look up and the S&P is up 20 and you're up 8 in any given year or any given 8, 9, 10-month period. It becomes dangerous for the end client because they start getting into the FOMO stage. Like, yes, I realize 8% is what I need, but why is the benchmark up 20? And so I've always thought that pegging anything to a benchmark is dangerous, especially if your mandate is to do different things than the benchmark, right? So if you're a large cap growth fund, obviously you're going to peg it to an S&P 500, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're an alternative or a tactical manager who is trying to reduce risk, go in and out of the market, what do you use as a benchmark? And how do you even present that helps the client?
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's really two issues that come about with benchmarks. One is benchmarks have no fees, right? So you're automatically looking at a different animal. And number two, benchmarks have no emotion attached to them, right? Clients are invested in something, and that something is pegged to another item that it goes up, it goes down, who cares, right? There's no emotion attached with that. It's I hate to say not fair. That sounds too wussy, but clients are forever making bad decisions based on emotions because the market does something a little bit crazy, their account does something a little bit crazy, and then they go off and make changes, and they should have just set right where they were. And that's easier to say for some investments than others. I certainly don't want to deal with a 35, 40, 50% loss. But, it is what it is. You've got to know what is attached to that account. That's more important, what those client goals are, rather than what the benchmark's doing. That's why I say benchmarks are stupid.
And I think that's why a lot of active managers have struggled. Yes, one of the reasons is the S&P 500 has basically destroyed everything. But the other side of that is people are so scared to deviate from the benchmark that they essentially hug it and try to do a couple things differently because it's career suicide and mutual fund outflows if you start deviating from the benchmark so much. And it's just, think about that argument. You're buying an active fund because you want them to do something different from the benchmark. And they're so scared to avoid doing something different, that they end up just being a worse version of an index fund.
Well, yeah.
And so that's the expectational issue that comes up when you're so focused on a benchmark.
Well, I think it is interesting too. In fact, we've written about the fact that we've got a blog post, right? Basically about, do you eat your own cooking? And studies have shown repeatedly that mutual fund managers, for the most part, don't have money in their own funds. And yet their compensation, typically bonus compensation, is based on the fact that, they're trying to beat that, whatever that benchmark is associated. So they don't even have any emotion involved in it other than they'd like to make more money. So it's one of those things that I think is a very difficult situation. I would rather see a world where planners figure out, do the calculations, what's the client have, what's the client need as far as an end goal, their dreams, wishes, etc. What can they contribute? And therefore, the last variable is what kind of return do they need to get to their goal? They need a 2%, a 4%, a 6%, an 8%, right? And you're choosing your investments.
And that's your benchmark.
That's right. That's what you're trying to do. Are we over time hitting the target of what the client needs? That's the more critical issue, right? I mean, and this is where, I've mentioned it before, expectational investing. You have to know what to expect in different market environments, and that's the way that you should be selecting your investments, not necessarily did they beat their benchmark. Hell, if that's the case, just go out to Morningstar, start picking 5-star funds and see how that works for you.
Yeah, so one of the examples that get brought up, I bring up a lot, is Warren Buffett. He's known as one of the greatest investors, and there was periods where he outperformed, quote unquote, the benchmark of the S&P 10-15% at times over a good period of time. And coming to 99, for example, Berkshire's down close to 20%, the S&P is up 20%. Now, if your only frame of reference is that year relative to a benchmark, you're going to obviously not think that's a great investment. And so it's just that mental game of tying everything to some benchmark when that benchmark it's not even what you want. Most people don't want S&P like risk.
Right.
I'm sure they take the return over time, but they don't necessarily want the risk. And we go through this all the time where someone looks at a track record over a 10, 15-year period and they're like, wow, this is great. And then 3 months into it, it does something different than the benchmark and they bolt. And so I think we can focus on trade wars and China and Trump and all these different things, but the behavioral side, things like using a benchmark and looking at a benchmark, I think are far more dangerous to clients making bad investment choices.
Right.
And if it wasn't mandated, frankly, I wouldn't even put it on a fact sheet. I mean, who cares what a benchmark is doing? And if you care that much, then just go by that benchmark.
Yeah,
that's really the point, right?
Buy a cheap index that gets that's as cheap as possible, or in this case, these days, obviously some of them are starting to be free, and then hold it and see how well that works emotionally with your clients. I guarantee they'll freak out.
Yeah, and we've always said that buy and hold and passive works,
if you hold it.
And this is the biggest, if you hold it. And in hindsight, a 50% decline 11 years ago is vastly different than today, right? And I read this survey where they track market declines and volatility and the increase in annuity inquiries to certain firms. And someone was reporting that their phones start going off the hook when you have this 3, 4, 5, 10% drawdowns. But imagine a 50% drawdown. That's going to really test a lot of people's sort of love for this whole cheap passive buy and hold, which once again, I believe works if you hold it through those drawdowns. And I guarantee, I can't use that word guarantee. I think highly that people won't hold it through that. Emotionally, it's hard to fathom losing 50% of your money.
Well, like anything, it's your personal situation, right? You're retiring next year. The market goes down 50%, and that's what you're holding. I guess I better don the blue jacket at Walmart. I mean, I'm not going to retire, and this is something that that's not near as scary as the year after you retire and it goes down 50%. You can't go back. You can't keep your old job, right? You are stuck trying to figure out what the hell you're going to do because you can't do anything that you had dreamed about. So yeah, I think we've killed it enough. Ultimately, the goal should be what return do I need and what risk am I willing to take? because ultimately I think it's not truly exponential, but look, let's face it, every extra annual 1% annual return that you want to add to the mix, you're taking on a considerably larger amount of risk in most cases, right? Your max drawdown might go up by 10% to get an extra 1% annual return. That's a scary proposition. Oh, you want to go up 2? Maybe you add 20. I mean, it's it's just something we have to be aware of. You want to make sure that the risk and return work together. So, anything else on that topic, sir?
No, I think this deserves some more attention. I do want to write a post about it because I think we see it in our business. I've seen it for 18 plus years now. It's dangerous, and it causes more issues with performance chasing than anything else when you're so overly focused on a benchmark.
Well, and you have to watch the disclosure too. It seems like almost every week we're talking about disclosure, but I've seen many times in my years of due diligence where the benchmark is changing over time. Right, every couple of years somebody's changing their benchmark, and so that makes you do a double take. Like, well, wait a second. So the results I'm seeing are from this date to this date, it's Y. This date to this date, it's Z. Right, and all of a sudden you're not really even. Do you even know what you're looking at? You're just looking at a picture and going, well, that looks good, but they keep changing the mark that they're following. So we take benchmarks very seriously from that standpoint and try not to make many changes. But it's one of those things you just have to be aware of. So, all right, on to the next topic. All right, hiring. What a joy it is to not. Some of the struggles, the hiring, the training, the state rules, the HR stuff, all those things that we, as owners of RIAs, and those listeners that are dealing with their own small business have to deal with.
One caveat to this, it's what we've encountered is the remote hiring problem. So historically, you have an office, you put out an ad for someone who wants to join your team within 30 or 40 miles of that office, right? So you know that you have a pool of prospects within a certain amount of mileage from your location. What we've been trying to do recently, effective I guess a month ago, is find a marketing person, but we have no location. We want to find someone that's remote. It can be anywhere. We want to find the best person regardless of where they live. And that's become such a problem. You go to LinkedIn, you go to Indeed, they force you to pick a location. So what happened recently that I talked to you about is I went to post the ad on LinkedIn, and they forced me to pick a location. I contact them. They tell me, hey, just pick your home office or a location where you think you want an employee. And I don't, how do you even do that? I don't know where I want an employee. I just want a really good person. So I picked Fort Lauderdale because that's where I live. And lo and behold, the first 4 candidates all came from Fort Lauderdale, even though they told me that the algorithm would go nationwide. So, we pull that ad back. We tried Indeed, same thing. And it's just, I don't know if we're not there yet as a society to be able to attract remote workers. I don't know what the answer is, but it's been quite a struggle to figure this out.
Yeah, well, even you basically get two different categories. One is the category of what I'm going to call the side hustle, right? I mean, you get a justwork.com or something like that where somebody wants to write or do a little bit of web development or this, that, and the other, and it's almost like contract work, right? It's let me bid for this job or that job, and I'll do a little bit. And yes, they're working from home. That's different from getting a full-blown actual employee. And you're right. I just don't think we're there yet from the standpoint of having that sort of offering where it doesn't matter where somebody's at. You can post the ad and it goes to everybody. And obviously the best candidate wins. It would be nice because obviously we've built a business that fits the way we want to live, and that is being a nomad or an ex-nomad, and being able to move around. And our home office staff is soon to be kind of in the same situation. They can work at home and have a little bit more freedom. So,
well, I think part of the problem is also the state issue, which if you have employees in multiple states, it becomes such a problem with the different rules and regulations and health insurance, and sometimes it's easier just to contract it out. Like if you find someone, in a state and going through the whole process of signing them up, getting the health care worked out, making sure that you follow all the rules and regulations for that state, sometimes it's better to just say, look, open your own LLC and we'll contract it out. And maybe that's what people are doing, using an Upwork or, like you said, a Just Work and just contracting it out versus hiring a full-time employee. It's interesting to see, like, if anyone has comments or anything, we'd like to get feedback from other folks on how you go about hiring. We even looked into a headhunter, which, it ended up being like 20, 30 grand. Is that even necessary anymore to pay that much? I mean,
yeah.
So what our conclusion was, we just started going out to referrals, right? We started asking everyone we know in the industry, do you know anyone? We're having good calls. We're still trying to figure it out. But the traditional way just doesn't seem to work for what we're doing.
Right. And on that note, I mean, look, let's make sure something that we need to add. If you have a thought, a comment, or a suggestion, you can send an email to info@potomacfund.com. That's real simple. There's also a contact us page on our potomacfund.com website. Right. Go ahead and give us your feedback, your thoughts, your input, or whatever, if you have a suggestion, because this is something that is definitely not an easy one. I realize that most advisors aren't trying to hire remotely. However, even if they do remote, they still kind of want them in their own region so that they can once a week come in or that sort of thing. But this is not something that's going away. From an age perspective, folks under 35 more and more want to be able to work from home. They want that freedom to be able to do some work at 11 o'clock at night or whatever, and you run the kid to school or whatever the excuse might be, the errand, etc. And I think that's great, frankly. I don't have a problem with it. That's why we do what we do. And we are in the business that all of us, us as well as those watching or listening, have the ability or the freedom to be able to do some of those things. So why not do them? Why not allow somebody to work
I don't think clients want to come to your office anymore either. I mean, sometimes depending on where you live, to do 5:30 traffic after work and come across town, maybe once in a while with an event or anything, but I just think that the world has changed with the connectivity. Yeah. But this could be a whole separate rant, which we can save for a later podcast.
When I was living in Prosper, right before we went to full-time RV living, to get to from the apartment that I could look out my window and see the grocery store in front of the green, on the other side of the green space, and Highway 380 right in front of it. In order to get to that, which was a block and a half, it's taken as much as 15 minutes in rush hour traffic. That's to get out of the complex and go a block up the street.
Across the street, yeah. I
mean,
well,
it's
welcome
like,
to
why do I not want to commute? I think I remember. So
yeah.
Anyway,
all right. What do you got? What recommendations? What have you been doing?
So recommendations. Well, yeah, this is a fun. So I was teasing you this morning. I think it's apropos that we hit on this one, because as we were working with some of these microphone changes and so forth, your gain settings, what number were you on with your microphone, and I teased you a little bit, because my recommendation is in regards to Dr. Ruth. This is on what do we got on Hulu? Dr. Ruth has a documentary about her. And for most of the people who might be listening will be old enough, if you're like me, about age 50, not quite, but close, you're going to remember her. Those of you younger who might be listening, like you, Manish, have no idea who Dr.
you're talking
That's
about.
why you need to watch the documentary. She was a Holocaust survivor, and ultimately, she was the first person, from my perspective, who openly, I mean, I'm talking about like on TV and in public forums, spoke about sex. All of the iterations of sex. And of course, this is back when you talk about the 80s and early 90s. You're also talking about when AIDS was coming to the forefront. And she was definitely an outspoken person in regards to that, making sure that the respect was given to those, no matter how they received that terrible disease.
Did you say it was on Hulu?
It is on Hulu, so you have to have a Hulu subscription to see it. But that's
hey, did you hear yesterday? So Disney their new bundle is going to be Hulu, ESPN Plus, and their Disney for $12.99.
Really? I'm in.
Yeah,
I'm in.
Well, sign me up. Obviously, anything. I was going to sign up for Disney if they charged me $50, but they're going to give me ESPN, and we already have Hulu.
Right.
The subscription, what ad supported, so you still see ads, which I don't really care.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're going to crush Netflix.
Yeah.
I mean, I have Netflix, but it's not my own login. I don't know how many people. I mean, things get shared around left and right, so. Anyway, I digress. All right, we'll check it out on Hulu.
Yeah,
but,
I think it's
but
worthwhile.
That comes out November 2nd, by the way.
There was a lot of information that about her. Like I said, I had respect for her before. definitely. I mean, this is the purpose of documentaries, right? To get more of the backstory and understand. I mean, she's still cranking, all 4'8" of her, or whatever. She's still out there doing presentations and things. So yeah, just a very remarkable lady, and brought reason to the table. So.
All right, I have one recommendation that I'll save for next week, but I have been binge watching a show on Netflix, but I want to get through a couple more seasons. It's getting pretty bad. I think I saw like 3 episodes last night, and I need to just go to bed. But anyway, my recommendation for the week is for Father's Day, my wife bought me a cooking class. I've always loved to cook. It's always been a passion of mine. And she bought me a cooking 101 class. And I went to the first class and was sort of not that excited because I know how to cook. So what is a cooking 101 class going to teach me? And surprisingly, I mean, I've learned so much. It's been so helpful. Just the little things that you don't think about when you're in the kitchen and you're cranking out a meal. And it's been such a good experience. And across America, every city has these cooking classes set up. It's a business. And I just think it's a good thing for everyone to get out and get out of the rat race and the everyday hustle where you can take a spouse, significant other, and go and not only do you get to cook it, you enjoy it, and you get to learn so much. I mean, there's from ingredients to the temperature of oil, the right pan and pot to use, how to cut.
Yeah,
it's such a good experience. I'm about halfway through. It's a 7-week class, once a week, and I think I'm going to keep going.
Cool.
They have a Thai class, a dessert class. It's been a great experience.
Yeah, I may have to check into something like that. I could use a few tips on the. I love to cook, but I make it up as I go along. But the temperature of oil. How do you know when it's the right temperature?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. People get so intimidated. They think that they're not trying to teach you to be, a superstar chef. It's just using the basics and how to prepare and how to cut everything and what oil to use and the temperature. I mean, these things make a huge difference in your meal.
Right.
And texture, right? Texture is make a slice of bread. If you put enough water in it, turns into mush. It's the same thing. It's just different texture.
Right.
And so I think, and to your point, we've had RIAs and reps in the past who have done this as a client event.
Yeah, we just had one of our Dallas group do that.
Huge success.
Yeah, we just had our Dallas group do that.
And with our conference, remember, we tried to do, we should still do it, the show Chopped. Right? Imagine that, where you can get a group of people together and you set up a chopped version where you have judges, you give them some ingredients and let them go off. That would be such a cool
As long as we can have wine, I'm down with anything.
Yeah.
So I think that's the trick, right? It's you got to have a little wine and then learn a little bit along the way. Yeah, that would definitely be a worthwhile experiment. So keep us posted on that. Anything else on recommendations?
That's it.
All right. So as we wind this up, again, reminder, if you have comments, questions, concerns, you want to hear about a topic, want us to approach something, get our insight, reach out to us at info@potomacfund.com. You can also go to our Contact Us page on the website. Likewise, subscribe, do your thing, man. Have a great week, and enjoy yourself.
See you.